Have you ever just looked at a place like Stonehenge or the pyramids, and your brain just kind of short circuits trying to figure out how? I mean, how did people with what we're told were primitive tools cut and move stones that weigh hundreds of tons, and then fit them together so perfectly you can't even slip a piece of paper between them? You know, the official stories, they don't always feel like they tell the whole story, do they?
It is so tempting, right, to fill in those gaps with these incredible stories. Lost high-tech, powerful magic, maybe even a little help from off-world visitors. And look, those ideas are a ton of fun to think about. But what if the real answer is something even more astonishing? What if it's a story about the raw, untapped power of human ingenuity, organization, and just sheer stubborn will?
Okay, so let's get into this. When you're staring at a mystery this big, you kind of come to a fork in the road. There's the path of myth, lost technologies, levitation, aliens, and then there's the path of evidence, looking at how societies were structured, the clever hands-on techniques they used, and the kind of political power that can literally move mountains. For this journey, we're going to stick to that second path, the path of evidence.
So here's our game plan. We're going to take a tour of some of the planet's most mind-boggling sights. First, we'll see how our ancestors worked with nature, not against it. Then, we'll dive into the wild art of building by taking things away. After that, we'll uncover the raw political muscle behind these megaprojects. And finally, we'll ask the big question: what does this all tell us about ourselves?
First up, some of the most stunning ancient creations weren't about conquering nature at all. They were about collaborating with it. These are places where ancient people looked at a natural feature and thought, you know what, I can work with that.
Let's head over to Indonesia, to a place called Gunung Padang. For a long time, everyone just thought it was a sacred hill. But then, in 2010, georadar scans showed this massive man-made structure buried underneath. And when scientists carbon-dated organic material from deep inside, the results were just, whoa, 20,000 years old. That is deep in the Ice Age, a time we're taught that humans were just small groups of hunter-gatherers.
So was this built by some lost super-civilization? Well, the geology itself points to a much more elegant answer: columnar basalt. It's this amazing natural volcanic formation where lava cools and cracks into these perfect brick-like columns. Nature basically did the heavy lifting. The ancient builders didn't need to quarry these stones. They found them ready-made, like nature's own Lego set, and brilliantly built them into terraces on the hillside. The mystery here isn't about laser cutters, it's about sociology. How did these early people get organized enough to work on one project for centuries?
This idea of working with nature shows up again, but this time it's underwater. Off the coast of Japan lies the Yanaguni Monument. A diver stumbled upon it back in 1986, and it looks, for all the world, like a sunken step pyramid. For it to have been on dry land when it was built, it would have to be at least 10,000 years old.
And again, the debate is on. Geologists point out that, yeah, this kind of sandstone naturally breaks in straight lines, and sure, underwater currents can carve sharp angles. But it's not a simple either-or question. The consensus is leaning toward this incredible idea of co-creation. Nature provided the massive, geometric rough draft, and ancient people came along to perfect it, carving details and shaping it for their own purposes.
Okay, let's shift gears now to a completely different and frankly just mind-boggling way to build. What if you didn't build up at all? What if instead you built down by just taking things away? Welcome to the Kailasa Temple in India. When you first see it, your brain just struggles to process what it's looking at. See, most buildings start with a foundation and go up, right? But to build this, you start with a solid cliffside. The method was as bold as it gets. Just carve away 200,000 tons of volcanic rock, leaving behind this colossal temple complex. It's not a building, it's a sculpture. The entire thing is one single monolithic piece of stone, carved from the top down. And get this, there was zero room for error. One wrong move and the entire project would be flawed for all time.
So how on earth did they do it? Supposedly in just 18 years, no lost super lasers. The answer is just ingenious applied physics. They use this simple but incredibly powerful technique. You drill a line of holes, hammer in some dry wooden wedges, and then just pour water on them. The wood swells with enough force to crack solid rock with amazing precision. You combine that with thousands of laborers working in shifts, and you see that human persistence can be more powerful than any mythical technology.
This whole idea of subtractive architecture goes even deeper, literally. Let's head over to Turkey. When you're building on the surface, your biggest enemy is gravity. You're always lifting things up. But when you build underground, gravity's your friend. All the debris just falls down and out. The new critical problem? Air. How do you get breathable air to thousands of people 18 stories deep?
This is Darren Kuyu. In 1963, a man knocked down a wall in his basement and found a tunnel that led to this, a complete underground metropolis that could house 20,000 people plus all their livestock. It had schools, churches, even wine presses. This was a massive, multi-generational project built not for some apocalypse, but as the ultimate fortress against centuries of invaders, from the Romans to the Mongols. And it was all kept alive by an ingenious system of hidden ventilation shafts.
So far, we've seen ingenuity and defense, but sometimes the motivation behind these incredible feats of engineering is much more cynical. Sometimes it's about raw, absolute power.
This is Nan Madol in Micronesia. They call it the Venice of the Pacific, and it's a city of 92 artificial islands built right on top of a coral reef. It's constructed from 750,000 tons of massive basalt logs. To put that into perspective, that's nearly as much stone as the Great Pyramid, but it was built by a population of maybe 25,000 people, with no metal tools, no wheels, and no animals to pull things.
So why go to all that trouble? The answer is chillingly brilliant: control. The ruling Sodalur dynasty forced all of their rival chiefs and their families to live there. On these artificial islands, there's no fresh water and no soil to grow food. Everything had to be brought in by boat. If a chief even thought about rebelling, the emperor could simply cut off their supplies. It was an architectural instrument of total tyranny.
Now for our final and maybe most baffling sight of all. We're going back to Egypt, but not to the pyramids. We're going underground, to the Serapeum of Saqqara. Inside, there are 24 of these, massive granite boxes. Each one weighs between 70 and 100 tons, plus a 30-ton lid. And here is the question that just stumps everyone. These boxes are made with what seems like optical precision, perfectly flat surfaces, perfect 90-degree corners inside. But the tunnels leading to them are incredibly narrow. How in the world did the ancient Egyptians navigate a 100-ton object through these tight hallways and then lower it perfectly into a little sunken room with barely any clearance?
The mainstream theory for cutting them involves stuff like copper saws and abrasive sand. It's a slow, laborious process that would take a whole team decades just to make one box. But even if that explains how they were cut, it doesn't even begin to solve the colossal logistical puzzle of how they were moved and placed with such impossible precision. This one remains a profound mystery.
So, after this whole journey through time and across the globe, what have we actually learned? What is the real story that these stones are trying to tell us?
The true lost technology probably wasn't some kind of device. It was a set of human skills we seem to have forgotten. The ability to mobilize huge chunks of the population for a single purpose. That's a masterclass in project management. The patience to plan projects that would outlive them, the genius of applying simple physics on a massive scale, and the immense power of a unifying goal, whether it was sacred or, totally tyrannical.
This gives us a new way to think about our ancestors, doesn't it? They weren't primitive, they just operated with a different set of resources. They might have lacked our computing power, but they had vast reserves of two things we often run short on: generational time and the ability to focus mass human effort on a single task for decades, or even centuries. They traded brute force technology for what you might call brute force collaboration.
In the end, it leaves us with a really provocative thought. We spend so much time marveling at the mysterious structures they left behind. The what. But perhaps the real marvel, the true lesson for us today, isn't what they built, but how they managed to build it, together.